why does the Supreme Lord appear in this material world? What is the reason for his Janma? We all know this very famous verse. So Krishna says if one understands Janma and Karma of him properly, then they can actually be delivered. So last week, the theme was how to understand the activities of the Supreme Lord, which is Leela. We don't usually use the word karma in relationship with the Supreme Lord's activities, though he himself uses that word. And we spoke about why it is difficult to understand the Leela of the Supreme Lord. And this week we are going to discuss about why does Krishna actually appear? What is his purpose? And we will do a quick recap of so far what we saw and then enter into today's topic, because it's been quite a number of weeks that we have been seeing these prayers. Literally, it is probably the sixth session or of on this prayers of Queen Kunti. So initially we started how Kunti spoke about why is it difficult for ordinary persons to understand the Supreme Lord, because we have pride and arrogance. Because of that, it becomes very difficult to understand for ordinary persons to understand the Supreme. They cannot, because of their arrogance, can never understand or fathom that there could be something which is inconceivable beyond their own intelligence. They're super proud of their intelligence, that conditioned souls think there can be nothing which is inconceivable to their intelligence. Because of that pride, it becomes very difficult for them to conceive the inconceivable Supreme Lord, because they lack love in their hearts. Okay, I don't have love. You're blaming me for that. So, what do I do now? Is there a way out of it? How do I develop love if I really want to understand God? Then she offers the first step, which is the first step in comprehending the incomprehensible is to actually begin by chanting the holy names of the Lord. So, the principle involved in chanting the holy names of the Lord is humility. So, from that humility and taking out time and to giving one's attention to the Supreme Lord's holy names, gradually the heart becomes open. So, with that humility and gratitude, one will be able to gradually comprehend the incomprehensible Lord. And once there is some level of perfection in chanting the holy name, then the Rupa, the form of the Lord, will naturally be gradually revealed. That is the natural progression. However, in order to aid the process of chanting in the beginning stages, when we already are not on the level of perceiving the Supreme Lord's form or being revealed his form naturally, what do? We actually take shelter of deity worship and get acquainted with the form of the Lord and meditate on the form of the Lord using the deity form. And in that way, that form, when we meditate and on the deity form and in the based on that, whatever pastimes we are hearing and chanting, based on that, we naturally it quenches all the sorrow in the heart, all the pain in the heart, and naturally the guna of the Lord will be revealed. When we chant and take darshan and engage in devotional service, naturally we start developing a connection with the Supreme Lord and we start appreciating his qualities. One of the most important qualities that a conditioned soul comes to appreciate in the Supreme Lord when they begin devotional service is his mercy. That recognition in the heart, or that realization in the heart, that how merciful my Lord is, that can actually melt one's heart. So, how do we know if our hearing and chanting, especially chanting of the holy names and our deity worship, is done in the right mood? When it is done in the right mood, we will get this overwhelming feeling that, oh, how merciful my Lord is unto me. That recognition of Krishna's mercy in our lives is actually the beginning of the stage of revealing the guna of the Lord. That is the first guna that we can actually start to appreciate. Without appreciating God's mercy, it would be impossible to appreciate or recognize the other qualities of the Supreme Lord. So, before we can move on to meditating on the pastimes of the Lord, we need to realize the mercy of the Lord on us. because only a humble person will be able to see God's mercy. Only a grateful person will be able to recognize God's mercy. And when we think of God's mercy, we can, in our naive understanding, think that everything should look happy, cozy, jolly, goody. That's what we think mercy as. However, Krishna's mercy is more, it could also be like the mercy of a doctor. When we go as a patient to see a doctor, it's not the doctor only speaks good words to us, but eventually gives us better pills or sticks a needle or even operates, cuts, removes dirty things. So the process may not look very easy or like very, what do you call, like clean in that sense. So similarly, Krishna's mercy, when it comes into our lives, can come in various forms. Sometimes it can come in forms which we can immediately appreciate. Sometimes it can come in the form, or most times it can come in the form which is hard to digest. I'm trying to be a devotee. Why is this difficulty coming into my life? And we may not see that as Krishna's mercy because it's very painful to the ego. However, when if we are grateful and if we are in proper association and if we are hearing, especially chanting the holy names properly, then we will start seeing the hands of Krishna in all of those events that is happening in our lives. Apparently the good ones or the bad ones. So the more we learn to actually see Krishna's hand in our life and appreciate his mercy in whichever form it comes, that means we have a grateful heart. We are not just chanting, we're not just taking darshan, we're not just doing deity worship, we're not just going and dancing in a queue. We are not using devotional service as an spiritual entertainment. We come to a state where we actually start appreciating Krishna's hands in our lives in however way it comes. And only a person who is able to gratefully count Krishna's mercy in whichever form it comes, they'll be able to recognize his hand in their life and will be able to appreciate Krishna's mercy. Most of the times, looking back, we can think, oh, I'm very glad Krishna did this in this particular way. That is the perfect way I would have actually learned and grow in my devotional service. So, hindsight, many times we appreciate whatever happened in our life, but when we go through them, it could be very difficult. So eventually, when we are able to actually appreciate Krishna's intervention in our lives, that helps us understand the activities of the Lord better, which we discussed between verses 28 and 31. And before I continue, Mother Ishwari, do you have any?
I just wanted to reflect on what you were saying and give a really quick example on something that happened to me, which, I realized it was Krishna's hand. A few years ago, when my mother was in hospice, I was going through hell and high water. It was just, it couldn't be, maybe because I've gone through a lot, but yeah, it was pretty bad. And I was hanging on to a group of friends. And the only reason in my heart I knew I hung on to them was because they distracted me from reality. They were the ones that would say, hey, you want to go hang out? Hey, you want to go to dinner? Hey, you want to do this? Things that I already had grown and separated from. But it was entertainment, right? It was easier than sitting and chanting and looking at deities for me back at that time because I wasn't that absorbed into all of this. But one day, somebody betrayed me in that group pretty badly. It was out of envy, and I knew it, and people told me, but I always have faith that people are nice and good and that they won't hurt me. And this person did. And what happened was, because of her betrayal, she kept going and creating this scenario where people were like now pulling away from me, not calling me. And in a way, I knew in my heart that it was good, but it became just a difficult moment compared to a very lonely period because then I didn't have that distraction. But in retrospect, when you look at it, it was the best thing that ever happened because eventually I knew I had to break away from all of them because it just wasn't serving my Krishna conscious, my path. But it happened, and it happened out of the blue, and it was wrong. Her betrayal was just on, what do you call it, assumption or speculation or something. It was totally wrong. She apologized to me, but I never spoke to her again. But she created this I had no one to turn to. I was here by myself. But I knew as soon as it happened, as much as it was hurting me, that, and I had to go through that because the betrayal is hard to, even if it's not like, it's coming from a person who would most likely betray you, it's still hard to go through. But every step of the way, I knew that it was Krishna's way to say, I need to get this away from you. So you do the hard work and focus on me and on your chanting and on your Krishna consciousness so that you could actually get through everything that you're going through much better than just avoiding it. So I just wanted to give that example because, yeah, it's hard, but I know it was Krishna's mercy right there.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing Krishna's hands in your life, even though it was very difficult, and also sharing. It is very inspiring. And that exactly, that hindsight, it becomes very clear. And if we are in a humble mood, it becomes very clear to us, even though it could be hard, it becomes very apparent that this is all for my good. And then it becomes more easy to go through it. And when it happens again and again, you become a pro. You start realizing what Krishna is doing, and sometimes we will let go very easily. The more you hold on to it, the more dirty it gets sometimes. And we realize, okay, this is Krishna's style of working. And we also start losing our grip. And it's easy for Krishna to remove those things from us so that we can come closer and closer to him. So the more we are in the game, the more we also understand how Krishna works, and it becomes easy. With that kind of a gratitude, it would be possible to actually recognize Krishna's mercy. And with that attitude of realizing Krishna's mercy, we will be able to understand the activities of the Supreme Lord. And that's what we discussed last week, that how why the pastimes of the Lord are so incomprehensible, because there are different kinds of people. We discussed how there are atheistic people who might reject any account of the Lord's activities in the scriptures as a myth. They don't have any faith that this is true. And there are impersonalists who may actually have belief that there is a supreme truth. But since they don't believe that absolute truth can have a form or interfere with the affairs of the Lord, they also do not believe or give the same amount of spiritual quality to the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And then there are theists, in which we discuss how there are people who believe in God and in His mercy, unlike the atheists. However, they don't believe in incarnations. Because, say, for example, even the Abrahamic faiths, they are God believing. They really believe that God exists and He is merciful, but they don't think God can personally come on earth. Because for them, coming in a human like form would make God part of duality and make him lose his transcendence. So there are also different layers of shades of understanding, but this is one bigger chunk, that yeah, people believe in God and his mercy, but may not believe that he can come into this world. And there are other people who are again very rare, that they believe in God and his mercy, and also that he can incarnate. However, though they are very rare, still they find it difficult to understand why would God come in strange forms like fish, tortoise, half lion and half man. So these kind of forms, why would God appear in these strange forms? It becomes very difficult for them to understand the specific forms of the Lord. They principally accept that the Supreme Lord can come down to this world, but it becomes very difficult for them to reconcile the different forms of the Supreme Lord. And there are other people who believe in God, who believe in His mercy, who believe in incarnations, and who also understand the different incarnations like fish or tortoise or half lion, half man, and even other forms like Parashuram or Ram and so many other forms. They believe in the Aishwarya forms, but it becomes very difficult for them to believe in Madhura Leelas. What I mean by Madhura is different from Madhurya. Madhura is sweetness. So the forms in which Aishwarya is established, and there are forms of the Lord in which Madhura is established. His sweetness is exhibited more, like in Krishna's pastimes. It becomes very difficult for them to understand how Krishna can become a small child, where he becomes fearful of his mother. That's what Kunti described in the verse 1.8.27, that she described the scene in which Krishna, who's feared by the fear personified, becomes fearful of his mother. So there he forgets his omnipotence. And some people can actually take objection. How can the omnipotent forget his omnipotence? How is it possible? So when the sweetness of the Supreme Lord's activities as a small child, as a cohort boy manifests, it becomes difficult for them to understand because it requires love to understand fully the motivation of Krishna. So Krishna's sole motivation is love for the living entities, but that love is so boundless, that love is so unconditional, and that love is transcendental. It's no wonder that imperfect minds of the conditioned souls cannot understand his motives. It's very easy to see the actions of people. It's very difficult to understand the motivations behind their actions, even of normal people. What to speak of the Supreme Lord, the infinite Supreme Lord who is so merciful? How is it possible that our imperfect minds can completely wrap our brains around his motivations behind those divine appearances? So it is very difficult, and that is why we need to actually, with faithfully hear from the scriptures and the devotees in order to understand what is Krishna's motivation. And that's what Queen Kunti is going to now describe in this section. Why does actually Krishna appear in this world? What is his motivation? What are his reasons for appearing in this world? So she discusses that from verses 32 to 36. Today, that is the idea that we explore the verses 32 to 36. It's already 9:30. And there are two reasons, a category of reasons, which is external reasons and internal reasons. The external reason is discussed between verses from 32 to 34 in three verses, and the internal reasons are discussed in verses 35 and 36. In one of these purports, especially the 35th verse, Prabhupada writes, the Lord is more merciful to the suffering living beings than they can actually expect. So it is very difficult to fathom the reasons, the multifarious reasons for which the Supreme Lord appears. And that's what Queen Kunti is going to describe in these verses from 32 onwards. So since we are going to begin it, if there is anything that anybody wants to share or ask, okay. If there is none, we could go on. Yes, Mother Gail.
Would you please explain the difference between Madhura and Madhurya? I didn't realize that there was this distinction.
Okay.
And is the only difference in the spelling the presence of the Y?
Surely not. Madhura is meaning, you have heard these terms, opulence and sweetness.
Yes.
Aishwarya and Madhuri. You have heard it, right? Like there are two types of leelas, the Aishwarya leela and the Madhurya leela.
Yes.
So usually we use the word Madhurya, and which is fine, but we also have a separate rasa called as Madhurya. So people may think that everything Madhurya is only in Madhurya. However, there is sweetness in Vrindavan leelas. All the Vrindavan leelas are more sweeter than Dwarka or other leelas. So there is no tinge of Aishwarya in the Vrindavan Leela, be it his pastimes with the cows or the cowherd boys, or with Nanda and Yashoda, or with the gopis. They are all sweeter, and they don't have a tinge of opulence or Aishwarya in them, unlike or any other Vaikuntha pastimes. So they all are form of sweetness. They don't have Aishwarya in that. So all those leelas are generically called as Madhura leelas. And the conjugal pastimes, like the rasa of conjugal love, is called as Madhurya specifically.
Okay.
Because it contains the most sweetness. So just by calling them Madhura, sometimes we may misunderstand that the pastimes as a small child that Nanda and Yashoda are enjoying, or the cowherd boys and cowherd friends, or the cows, that whatever pastimes that Krishna is having in Vrindavan, they are all actually sweetness personified. They don't have a tinge of Aishwarya at all. That's why the word Madhura is sometimes used by different some acharyas instead of using Madhurya, which gets confused with, oh, only the conjugal love has. Yes, other as Keshav Madhu Prabhu saying Madhurashtakam. So there is a whole, like there is Ram Madhuram. Have you heard this particular bhajan? Yeah. So the same line of thought.
Oh, okay. So the word Durya refers strictly to the rasa, like Shringar.
Yeah, could be seen that way.
The way you say it means
Yeah, means
could be
like
seen other ways
because
too.
there is a general connotation, so people assume that is the only thing. But the same word could be used in different context and have different meanings.
Madhurya?
However, people can confuse them if they are not clear of the context.
Oh,
So when I say Aishwarya and Madhurya, it does not mean Madhurya.
no?
It will include Madhurya Rasa also, because all of those things are sweetness personified, all those pastimes in Vrindavan. That's why I'm using the word Madhura instead of Madhurya.
Yeah, okay. The way I'm understanding you is that all of those various rasas where awareness of Krishna's godliness is not there, that would be called Madhura.
Yes.
But it is only Krishna's relationships with the gopis that would be called Madhurya.
Yes. However, sometimes for simplicity's sake, we tend to say there are two types of leelas of Krishna. One is Aishwarya, the other one is Madhurya. We almost use, we tend to use that Madhurya as a general sense of sweetness also.
I see.
Okay.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Krishna. Thank you. So now that we have seen sorry, I'm struggling. Earlier section we saw why the pastimes of the Supreme Lord are incomprehensible. So now in this section we are going to see why does Krishna actually appear in this world, because it is very difficult to understand Krishna's motivations. As the Supreme Lord, he is infinite, so it's very difficult to understand his motivations. So that's why we are trying to understand what are the reasons for Krishna's appearance in this world, from verses 32 to 36, and the external reasons. We're beginning with them. Some say that the unborn is born for the glorification of pious kings, and others say that he is born to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appear in this family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya hills. So Kunti is stating that means some say. Basically, she does this to present various reasons, and she is also distancing herself from these opinions. Some say means it is not her opinion exactly. Excuse me. So she is going to give multiple opinions in the coming verses 32, 33, and 34. And she will say, because all of those opinions, different people say different things. But what she says, what is her conclusion, will come at the end in the verse 36. So that's why she is calling them as Kechidahu. That means some say that unborn is born for the glorification of pious kings. And others say that he is born to please King Yadu. So he appears as in a family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya Hills. Sandalwood could potentially grow anywhere, but because it grows in Malaya Hills, sometimes it is called as Malaya Sea. So similarly, the Supreme Lord could appear in any family. He is not limited. He appeared from the nose of Brahma. He appeared in the form of a boar. He appeared in the form of a fish or tortoise. So nothing actually limits where he can appear and how he can appear. Still, he chooses to appear in certain families in order to actually glorify them. But compares this with the sun. The sun is not belonging to any particular direction, but because it rises in the east, sometimes we think it belongs to the eastern horizon. However, sun is equal to all the directions. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is not obliged to take birth in any family. However, he does so in order to reciprocate the love of his devotees. And so, as different people, Punya Shloka could refer to Nala, King Nala, if you know the Puranas of Mahabharata and other stories. This story is very famous. Or it could also mean King Yudhishthira. So here Srila Prabhupada clarifies that in this particular purport, that Maharaj Nala was also celebrated as a great pious king, but he had no connection with Lord Krishna. So Prabhupada discounts it could not be King Nala. Rather, it should be King Maharaj Yudhishthir is to be meant here to be glorified by Lord Krishna. And why? Because he takes birth in this world although he is unborn. And he clearly says that in the Bhagavad Gita, that I appear in this world. Krishna, in his own words in the Bhagavad Gita, clarifies that he comes. He clearly says that I come. So there is no doubt if there cannot be any denial of the birth of the unborn, as Prabhupada says here. Still, there are different opinions as to why he takes birth. And that's what Queen Kunti is exploring here. And Krishna himself states by his own internal potency To establish the principles of religion and to protect the pious and to annihilate the impious, he comes. So, in order to achieve that the re-establishment of the principles of religion and to protect the pious and to annihilate the impious, he establishes devotees as king. Because many upstarts, even demonic people like Jarasandha, Tarash, and Dush could act like protectors of dharma as good kings. However, Krishna knows clearly who's who. So, in order to actually clear that unqualified people acting as if they are qualified and posing as very pious kings, so he wanted to expose them. So, for that, he needed to establish King Yudhishthira and the Pandavas as the rulers. So, he's using this mission. At the same time, he's also glorifying Yudhishthira Maharaj as his choice. So, in order to do both, he actually appears. So, since when there is a pious king ruling over the world, the people are happy. If the ruler is impious, then people are unhappy because they torture them. And Prabhupada writes a very interesting statement in this. He says, in the case of democracy, the impious citizens themselves elect their representatives to rule over them, and therefore they cannot blame anyone for their unhappiness. It is we who vote and choose a person, and then if that person torments us, then we cannot blame anyone else because we made the choice. And here Prabhupada is saying, for this reason, to establish dharma, he makes Yudhishthira Maharaj as the king. And in this way, he appears for the sake of glorifying great devotees like Maharaj Yudhishthira. And it is also said that the Lord glorified his devotees like King Yadu by taking birth in his family. Why specifically he came in Yadu's family? He could have come anywhere. One of the commentaries mentions that how to exemplified this particular principle, that he gave up material enjoyment for the sake of his service. He could have actually accepted the old age. However, he declined because he knew there is a bigger service that he needed to actually perform. So he let go of the lower dharma in order to fulfill the higher dharma, and the right choice of declining material enjoyment for the sake of spiritual advancement. He wanted to really glorify that choice of King Yadu. So he appeared in his family in order to glorify King Yadu's choice. And that's when we've already seen that how just like sandalwood could go anywhere, but because it grows in Malaya Hills, becomes related to the sandalwood and gets glorified. Similarly, the Lord could appear in any family. Because he takes birth in the family of Yadu, they become glorified as Yadavas. And the family becomes glorified where in which the Supreme Lord appeared. So these are some of the thoughts that she shares and Prabhupada clarifies. So the essential reason that Kunti Maharani gives in this particular verse, that is Krishna appears, according to some, Krishna appears for the sake of glorifying devotees like King Yudhishthira and King Yadu. And okay, let's see what are others saying. Apare. What are others saying? Premaya. Others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly, you are unborn, yet you take your birth for their welfare and to kill those who are envious of the demigods. There are more reasons. That the second reason is that the Supreme Lord appears because great devotees like Vasudeva and Devaki actually yachito, they prayed for the Supreme Lord to appear as their son. And Prabhupada writes that how in this previous birth, Sutapa and Prishni underwent severe type of penance to get the Lord as their son, and as a result of such austerities, the Lord appeared as their son. It's already declared in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord appears for the welfare of all the people of the world and to vanquish the asuras or the materialistic atheists. So this is the other reason that the Supreme Lord appears to answer the prayers of devotees and devas. So what is the other reason? Bharavatar. Translation. Others say that the world, being overburdened like a boat at sea, is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and so you have appeared to diminish the trouble. So Prabhupada, in his purport into this verse, in the first section of the purport, elaborately explains that how Brahma is the son of Narayan, and the whole principle that how Lord Narayan is independent, he is omnipotent, and without any contact with Lakshmi, he could just create Brahma. And he also brings out this principle that how without spiritual contact, matter cannot create. All these material universes did not come on their own. It came because of the will of the Supreme Lord. And he also speaks about Brahma's appearance and how he was created without the help of Lakshmi Devi. And in this way, how Narayan is transcendental and he's not an ordinary being. So, how great Brahma is. So, he's basically establishing how great Brahma is. He's directly the son of the Supreme Lord, Atma Bhu. And this, in this way, he actually is glorifying Brahmaji and then saying, because he is so intimately connected with the Supreme, whenever there is trouble in the universe that cannot be solved by the administrative demigods, they actually approach Brahmaji for solution because he is the chief creator or the secondary creator who's overseeing this world. If it is not to be solved even by Brahmaji, if it becomes difficult even for Brahmaji to solve the problem, then Brahmaji consults and prays to Kishiro Dakshay Vishnu for an incarnation and solution to the problems. So when Kamsa and other kings like Jarasandha tormented the demigods, it was becoming very hard for them. So they went and spoke to Brahmaji, and Brahmaji also could not find any easy solution. So along with the other demigods, he prayed at the shore of Shirodaka Ocean, and it was revealed in his heart that the Supreme Lord himself will descend in his original form as Krishna, as the son of Vasudeva. And that is, and then they were asked, the other demigods could also appear in that family, and eventually all of these kings will be liberated. So that was what shared or revealed to Brahmaji. So some people say that the Lord appeared because of the prayers of Brahmaji. So the first reason is that the Supreme Lord appears to glorify kings like King Yudhishthir or King Yadu, or the second reason is the Supreme Lord appears in order to glorify his devotees like Vasudeva and Devaki, who were actually under the threat of death and still they choose to serve the Supreme Lord. And the other reason is that he is touched by the prayers of Brahmaji and the demigods, because they are also not just praying for themselves, they are also praying for the welfare of all the living entities. So that prayers, that call for compassion, that feeling of compassion in the Supreme Lord, that call for help makes him appear. So this is another reason. So these are the reasons explored in the first three verses, which are the external reasons, that the Supreme Lord comes to establish true Dharma through religious kings. So that is very important. But further important is that he comes to glorify the dharmic principle of renouncing material enjoyment for devotional service. The first is for King Yudhishthira, the second is for King Yadu, that he chose renouncing material enjoyment for the sake of devotional service. And the third reason is he comes to immortalize the devotion of Vasudeva and Devaki, because they chose to serve the Lord even under the threat of death. And further is that he heard the prayers of Lord Brahma and comes to lay the road to salvation for all people of this world. He understands if dharma is lost, the people won't be able to practice. So he came out of compassion for all living beings subjugated by the demonic forces like Kamsa and others. So why are they called as external reasons? It seems like he is coming to help. How can this be external? It is external in the sense these are all when the Lord was personally present. All these people will benefit when the Lord was personally present. The religious kings were there, so the Krishna personally came and established them, and all the people that lived in during those times would benefit. And he came to glorify Yadavas, and that family would benefit and be immortalized. He came and reciprocated with Vasudeva and Dev, and he came out of his compassion for Lord Brahma and the demigods. And he also wanted to give compassion to all the living beings who were living at that time to free them from the subjugation of kings like Kamsa and Jarasandha. That's fine, but it is limited to within the time frame of his appearance. People only who lived at the same time as his appearance would benefit from these things. So that's why the acharyas are categorizing two other reasons as internal reasons, which is basically not just people who are present at the time of his appearance, but Krishna also wants to pave the way for liberation for all conditioned souls suffering due to ignorance for all the rest of the time to come. So that's why these two reasons we are going to see in 35 and 36 are considered as internal, because it is not limited by the time frame in which Krishna appeared. It's going to benefit even after Krishna's appearance, long after Krishna's appearance in this world. Ishwari, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
And maybe this is a question we could talk about more offline. So talking about limitation, like the time period that he came and only to those people. I just had a question from my older son. By the way, he's not a child, he's 34. But they love the path and they do in their own ways. They like more gravitate towards the deities. But they were asking me, it's an Indian faith, it's an Indian religion.
Mm.
I'm like, and I try to explain to them in my limited amount of knowledge is to go to universal knowledge, universal faith. It's not just Indian. But how do I explain to people when they say, why did it all happen in India? Why are they all in saris or this and that? Why this? And I'm like, that I can't explain to you, but God had to pick somewhere. And maybe India was more attractive. Maybe it was the spices or something. I don't know how to explain it without being comical. But is there a reason for it being in India? Which I have no issues with. I think anywhere is beautiful, but I don't know
Yeah.
how to explain it. Yeah.
Means there are multiple reasons. I can say something which is a little bit like not politically correct. It's just like a little bit more easy for normal people to understand. If you think of weather, like the climate is very important for the practice of lifestyle and certain lifestyle choices. It becomes very easy. It becomes very important to have a certain kind of a climate. If you see the religious principles of being merciful, being clean, or being truthful, and all of these things, especially being merciful, it requires a certain kind of principles like being non-violent, like not having a certain diet which is violent. It becomes very climate dependent also. We cannot judge people for certain cultures because they are born in certain places which does not facilitate. Today we have like modern advancement, like with electricity, we can live almost in a similar way as if we are living in a tropical country in terms of our food habits. However, it would be impossible if there was no electricity right now in the USA to eat the kind of food that we eat. A majority of them are exported from outside. It is a very artificial way of living in one sense. Most of the fruits, most of the grains and cereals, they all are exported. Only some of them would be actually grown in the US. So the colder countries, it becomes very difficult to keep up a lifestyle which is required for higher dimensions of spiritual life. Still, there can be some spiritual life, but if you see the dharma which is propagated in this land, meat eating would be allowed. It is not a big deal. If you think of see the Abrahamic religions, it's part of the faith. It's okay. It's not like considered a taboo to be a good Christian and still eat meat. Though it may be not central to the teachings, it might have got changed over a period of time. Whatever we say, there are some adjustments that needed to be made according to time and place and circumstances. So if you see the world, India does seem to have a what do you call, like an edge. It has got some advantages to it in terms of its geographical location and the weather and climate that it can support for a refined way of spiritual life. How Indians today use it is a very different thing, but it could be used for a very refined spiritual way of life. So that could be one way that I look at it. There are multiple reasons, but this could be one very practical reason that we could look at it. And maybe after the thing, if we have time, others could also join and we could discuss further on that. And for now, we will continue with the verses 35 and 36 and complete this section. So at least I feel like I complete one section a week. And sometimes it becomes hard. So the external reasons, we just saw that how it could be to establish dharma through religious kings, or to glorify Yadu, or to glorify Vasudeva and Devaki, or to answer the compassion of Brahma, or to actually be compassionate towards all the people being tormented by kings like Kamsa. However, it is immediately relevant to their times. What about for the rest of the time? So Krishna is not going to limit his appearance only for the sake of the people when he appeared. Rather, he wants the benefit to be experienced by everyone for the rest of the time. So actually, those internal reasons will be discussed in 35 and 36. In short, Krishna actually comes for us, for you and me. And that's what Kunti is trying to explain in this. When we think, oh, why does Krishna appear in this world? Sounds like Krishna is very far. But what Queen Kunti is trying to inspire is, don't think he appeared for this and that. No, he appeared not for Yudhishthira, maybe for Yudhishthira, maybe for Yadu, maybe for Vasudeva and Devaki, maybe to answer Brahma. More than anything, he appeared for you and me. He appeared individually to benefit each one of us. So she is bringing it more closer to us and make us feel more personally connected to Krishna and understand that Supreme Lord comes into this world and does all of this because he thinks an infinitesimal, insignificant jiva like me, he actually cares each, even however insignificant I might feel I am. But in the eyes of Krishna, I'm very important. And he wants to make sure that I have this opportunity to connect with him. And just for that sake, he comes. And this is individually true to each one of us. So we all can think in such a personal way that Krishna has come personally in this world for me. And what is it that for me? How can I benefit from his appearance? And that's what she's going to describe from verse 35 and 36. And yet others say that you appeared for the sake of rejuvenating the devotion service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditioned souls suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. So here my Queen Kunti is speaking a higher reason, where she is saying that the Supreme Lord has appeared to pave way to liberation for all conditioned souls suffering due to ignorance for the rest of the time. Because in the material world, ignorance, avid, creates karma. This second line, if you see, karma bihi. Avidya is ignorance, kama is desires, and karma is the actions and reactions that we suffer. So, due to ignorance, we develop ignorant desires. And because of those ignorant desires, or material desires, we engage in material actions, which gives us material reactions. And we continue to suffer in this cycle without hope. So the conditioned soul is going on in this cycle that ignorance leads to material desires, leads to material actions, and the material reactions also reinforce that ignorance. So it just feels an infinite loop which never could be broken. And Krishna is coming to break this cycle. So his direct attack is on the avidya, ignorance. How? Sharhani. By hearing about the Supreme Lord, our ignorance will be destroyed and our desires will be transformed so that our karma will cease to exist and we will achieve liberation. So, why is Krishna coming? He is appearing for the sake of rejuvenating devotional service of hearing and remembering and worshipping. Shravana Smarana Arhani. For what reason? So that we could be released from the suffering of the material pangs and then gain liberation. So this is the reasoning given in this verse. We will see the further elucidation of this reason in the next verse. But for now, this is the verse, this is the reasoning that she sticks to. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about very beautifully in this chapter, that in this purport, that how a living being cannot help but render service because he is constitutionally made for that purpose. But because currently we don't want to serve the Supreme Lord and we have become overcome by material desire, and Prabhupada says this desire is called as avidya or nescience. That's this misunderstanding or the forgetfulness of our connection with the Supreme Lord. What is our connection with the Supreme Lord? One of service, one of being his servant. We have now forgotten our original position as being the servant of the Supreme Lord. So we have forgotten that original position. So that is our ignorance. Because of that, now we are actually covered with material desires. We develop material desires. And because of that, Prabhupada says, out of such desire, the living being makes different plans for material enjoyment and centered about perverted sex life. So he says the conditioned soul therefore becomes entangled in the chain of birth and death by transmigrating into different bodies on different planets. So in this way, it just becomes a ever perpetuating ignorance. So unless therefore one is beyond the boundary of this nescience, one cannot get free from the threefold miseries of material life. So basically, out of his mercy, the Supreme Lord appears to liberate us from this miserable condition we are in. Due to our ignorance, we develop material desires, and due to material desires, we engage in all kinds of actions and become completely bound in the chain of birth and death. And in order to release us, the Supreme Lord comes. And Prabhupada beautifully writes in the last purport, the Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he is more merciful to the suffering living beings than they can expect. We have never experienced such mercy in this life. So it's very hard for us to understand why would someone be merciful to us. So that's why Prabhupada is saying that he is more merciful to the suffering living beings than they can expect, appears before them and renovates the principles of devotional service, comprised of hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, cooperating, and surrendering unto him. Adoption of all the above mentioned items or any one of them can help a conditioned soul get out of the tangle of nescience and thus become liberated from all material sufferings created by the living being, illusioned by the external energy. This particular type of mercy is bestowed upon the living being by the Lord in the form of Lord Sri. So he's basically saying that the Supreme Lord appears in order to actually liberate us from the material suffering. So this is the simple understanding that how this chain of karma is vicious. It's very hard to break it unless a person actually begins to hear and remember the Supreme Lord, and which can dispel the darkness of ignorance. Indra says in his prayer, he says, time can destroy anything and everything. You build a big empire, you may be a multi-billionaire, you may have all kinds of businesses and successes in this world. You could be however great you can conceive in this material world. Time can actually dismantle it perfectly without even a trace. We keep finding great lost civilizations every now and then. Some archaeological sites keep popping up everywhere in the world. And every time it actually astonishes people. Oh, how in the world something like a pyramid was as huge as a pyramids, they were like covered by sand. So it is very easy for the time energy to actually just dismantle all the material accomplishments we have. Gajendra says there is only one thing that time cannot destroy. That is my ignorance. So please destroy that. I can life after life go on and on with my material desires, and I'll never be released from my ignorance. It only gets better and better. In a sense, it gets worse and worse. Gajendra's prays, please destroy that. That what even time cannot destroy that ignorance. So, without hearing and chanting and understanding the pastimes of the Lord and meditating on the Lord, one cannot actually break this cycle of ignorance in our hearts. So, the Lord's pastimes are all to set us free from this prison by eradicating our ignorance, material desires, and eventually all the karma. So this famous prayer from the Gita is also, you would have heard. Brahmaji is saying, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose glory ever triumphantly dominates the mundane world by the activity of his own pastimes. Basically, Brahmaji is saying by his own Leela, which dominates the material world. What happens? He completely overcomes the material existence. He wins over the whole material existence just by his sweet pastimes. What happens now to the living entities? They start meditating on these activities of the Supreme Lord, on the Leela of the Supreme Lord. By that recollection of the activities of the Supreme Lord, they can actually experience a blissful bliss. Ananda Chinnanasu. Their mind will become overcome by the transcendental ecstasy by meditating on the activities of the Supreme Lord. By remembering the activities of the Supreme Lord, the living entities can actually experience bliss. In one sense, they can also get liberated. So now that she has presented many reasons, there is another question now. Yes, there are so many external reasons, and then there was this internal reason that Krishna comes for liberating me personally from this material existence. However, the other acharyas raise question, this also sounds too external. Is liberation the intrinsic goal of...
We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I touched my microphone. I'm not sure where I was. I think the internal reason is, yes, Krishna is coming to actually liberate me, and he's coming personally in order to liberate me. It is very nice. However, some acharyas have an objection. Is the Supreme Lord coming just for the sake of offering mukti, from freedom from the material bondage? Is that all the goal of bhakti? Is that the intrinsic purpose of bhakti? So they have an objection to this verse, this reasoning that Queen Kunti is saying. Is liberation the main goal of practicing bhakti? Kunti explains, no, the main purpose is, this is just the external purpose. Again, within the internal purpose, this is a secondary reason. So Queen Kunti explains what is the main reason for the appearance of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the final verse 36 of this section. Those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. So Prabhupada again writes an amazing purport to this verse. How Prabhupada actually goes about handling this purport is, he speaks that how Krishna cannot be seen by our present conditional vision. How are we going to develop a vision to see Krishna? And here Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, seeing Krishna means developing love for Krishna. So the main purpose, the primary purpose of Krishna's presence is that he wants us to develop love for him. So that's why initially also we saw that Krishna as the Supreme Lord, his sole purpose of appearing in this world and executing his engaging in his pastimes is love. His sole motivation is love. And that love is so boundless, that love is so unconditional and transcendental, it becomes hard for the conditioned living entities to appreciate that love. Being covered in ignorance, they actually denounce the Supreme Lord, the very Lord who is coming for their benefit. They denounce them. They restrict his abilities by their understanding. They tend to, or they superimpose their ideas on him, restricting the power of his love, and they don't reciprocate with his love. Still, out of his mercy, he comes. And because we are covered by ignorance, we cannot actually see it with our conditional vision. So, how am I going to develop a vision to see Krishna's love and develop love for him? So, that's when Prabhupada says, in order to develop a necessary vision, one need to hear about the Supreme Lord. I'm not reading the whole purport, but I'm just following the thought process, the line of thought. Initially, Prabhupada in the first paragraph, the first section, he speaks about that how we lack vision. Conditioned souls lack vision to understand the Supreme Lord. It's not very easy to see him because of our current eyes. And the necessary qualification is developed by the process of devotional service. So that is the purpose of coming of Krishna, that he wants to offer us the devotional service, which we saw in the previous verse also. Shravana, Smarana. But the problem is there, the primary purpose is not covered. Devotional service was covered, but the primary purpose was not covered. The secondary purpose, liberation, was covered. The primary purpose of offering devotional service to the conditioned souls is to actually help them awaken the love in their hearts for the Supreme Lord. That is as simple as that. We hear this conclusion from Srila Prabhupada all the time, so you may think, I know that. However, he is opening it up layer by layer, so we can actually appreciate something which is so great. When it is offered very easily, sometimes we lack appreciation for it. So Queen Kunti is unpacking it gradually and showing how that the Supreme Lord appearing in order for us to develop love for him is the highest thing. And Srila Prabhupada, he has given that highest thing because he repeats it. We may think, oh, I know it. But if we meditate on it, we can actually understand, oh, the Supreme Lord is literally coming to awaken my love, to actually want to reciprocate love with me. And he actually is what you call thirsty for love, not because he is lacking something. He understands that without developing love for him, we won't be happy. And our happiness is his happiness because he loves us. So he has nothing to gain. However, he is so concerned for our unhappiness that he wants us to be happy. And we can only be happy if we can actually love him. So that is why he comes, so that we can develop love for him. Not because he is lacking something. He just wants everyone to love him and nothing else. No, he understands our happiness is in loving him, and his happiness is our happiness, and our happiness is his happiness because he loves us. That is the primary reason he is coming here. And to that effect, Prabhupada is saying we can only understand all of these things if we engage in devotional service. And it begins with Shravana. So how does the process of hearing work? What is the science of the process of hearing? He says there are two components in this. One is the speaker and one is the hearer. Both need to be actually perfect in order for the process to work. the first emphasis is usually kept on the speaker. The purity of the speaker is also very important in order for the conditioned souls to actually awaken their Krishna consciousness. A very competent, that is spiritually competent, and bona fide speaker is the first and foremost component in the equation of the science of hearing. I feel guilty in saying that because I know who I am, and it is your misfortune that you have me as your speaker. But however, I'm one of your teachers in the sense of more like a friendly one who's like reading and learning along with you. So I'm not your primary teacher or anything. So you have hope in life because you have Prabhupada and other senior teachers as your primary teachers. Here I'm more like facilitating the process of studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So that way I don't need to feel much guilty. That's why I'm saying this. So the competence, spiritual competence of a speaker is very important. And then the person who's hearing, their sincerity and attitude is also extremely important. Prabhupada spoke to a lot of people. Just because he is Prabhupada, it's not that everyone's heart got transformed to the same extent. So in this equation, there are two equal players, a competent and bona fide spiritual master and a competent and bona fide student. They both need to come together. That is the perfect example of Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. That's why Srimad Bhagavatam is considered very special, because it is received in that perfect way. So when it is heard, it also can have the same effect if we are in the right attitude as Parikshit Maharaj. So when the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other processes become automatically perfect in their own way. So it all begins with hearing, and discipleship is to actually train our attention. What is the main duty of a disciple? The main duty of a disciple is to train their minds to be attentive to the words of the spiritual master. So the more we actually take it very seriously and hear our spiritual teachers more attentively and with humility and with gratitude, then that hearing, a honest hearing, can actually open the heart, can churn the heart, can actually transform the heart, and everything else can actually follow from there. So, who do we hear and how we hear? They both are very important. That's what Prabhupada speaks about in this purport. He says, different transcendental activities of the Lord, they're all competent to bestow the desired result, provided the hearing process is perfect. Of course, Prabhupada speaks about the dangers of just focusing on some leelas are higher than the other. Instead, we should be able to progressive progressive progressively develop our attachment to the Lord's different types of leelas. And basically, the whole purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam is to revive our lost relationship with Him. And that is the purpose for which the Supreme Lord is also appearing, so that we will have subject matter to discuss in the Bhagavatam based on His appearance and pastimes. So, by discussing that, we can actually revive our lost relationship with Him. We can awaken love for Him. That is the primary purpose of Krishna's appearance. Why does Krishna come? So that you and me can develop love for Him. Why is He bothered? Because He loves us. So He wants us to love Him. Is that selfish? No. We can only be happy when we love Him, because that is our constitutional nature. So He sees our happiness as His happiness, and for our own benefit, He wants us to love us. And that is the reason He appears in this world. And Baba, if you see this last line, Baba, so both the reasons are given in this last line. That is, we will develop a vision to see the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. That is indirectly meaning that we will awaken love for the Supreme Lord. That is the primary reason. Baba Pramam, that is, the cessation of material existence, is a byproduct of awakening love for Krishna. It is never the primary reason. The primary reason is developing a vision to see the Lord, developing love for Him. And there is much more to share in the commentaries, but I do know that we are at 10:15 already. So we will give a quick summary and then open up for any further questions. So we discussed today, why does Krishna appear in this world? There are external reasons and there are internal reasons. External reasons is that He comes to establish true dharma through religious kings like King Yudhishthir, by establishing them as kings. So He can establish dharma in the world. So that is one reason He comes to glorify kings like Yudhishthir. And then He also comes to glorify the dharmic principle of renouncing material enjoyment for devotional service as exemplified and embodied by Yadu, King Yadu. So in order to glorify him also, he appears. And then he appears to immortalize the devotion of Vasudeva and Devaki. He also appears because of the prayers of Lord Brahma and out of compassion for all the living beings subjugated by demoniac kings like Kamsa. And these are considered as the external reasons because some of these reasons, or all these reasons, are limited to the time frame of Krishna's appearance, that eventually directly benefited only the people who actually lived at that time. However, Krishna also wants to help anyone and everyone who would come even after his appearance. So the internal reason is that Krishna specifically comes for us, for you and me. For what reason? You and me. It's not just to liberate us from the material existence, it is to awaken our love for him. So that is the primary reason. So to offer the opportunity of devotional service to one and all. That is why he comes. He wants to offer the opportunity of devotional service to one and all. That is a one reason. That is the main reason he comes for in this world. Okay, what happens by devotional service? Oh, you get liberated. No, that is only a byproduct of bhakti. The main product of devotional service is to awaken love for Krishna in our hearts, and that is the main reason for his appearance. And liberation is just a byproduct of bhakti. And this is the summary. This could have been as simple as that, but opening it layer by layer. And this is one good statement we could meditate on. When the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other processes become automatically perfect in their own way. So the whole purpose of devotional service is to awaken love. So we can think, what am I doing in my devotional service? How am I trying to reciprocate with Krishna's appearance specifically for myself? So we could ask that, and it could benefit us in our practice. So we become more attentive and present in the process of hearing and chanting, and take it more seriously to awaken our love. So thank you for this opportunity to meditate on the words of Queen Kunti, and also to prime my own heart by hearing her teachings and by trying to spend time with and understand them. So extremely grateful for this opportunity by all of your grace. If there are any questions or comments, we could take now for some time.
Yeah, when you were saying that, you're talking about his internal reasons for coming. And maybe you're saying the same thing in a different way, but the way I understand it is that he comes to engage in loving pastimes with both his pure devotees as well as those who are trying to become pure devotees. I feel would you agree with that statement?
Can you?
As an internal reason.
Okay.
Right?
He comes to engage in pastimes with his internal, like his associates as well as other, to benefit everyone. Is that your point?
No, what I was saying was that his internal reason was to have loving exchanges with his associates, perfected devotees, as well as those who are aspiring to become his devotees. And the external reason was, yes, he wants everyone to benefit, but that would have been more like a byproduct, an external reason. Like those who witness his pastimes aren't necessarily trying to become his devotees. They would benefit, and Krishna wants them to benefit, but that would not have been his internal reason for coming. It would have been like a positive byproduct of his coming. But my understanding is that his primary and internal reason is to have these loving exchanges with his aspiring devotees and those who are already pure.
Yeah, I would say it's very much in line with what Queen Kunti is saying. Hindsight, I think I should have used it as secondary reasons and primary reasons instead of internal and external. I think I didn't think much at that time, but now looking back, I think I could have termed it as primary reasons and secondary reasons. Instead of saying external, I could say them as secondary. And within the primary also, there is one, the foremost primary, and there is a secondary. Like liberation is considered secondary, and awakened love for Krishna is considered as primary.
Oh, when you say liberation as secondary, Yeah, people may become liberated, but that is not at all his interest.
Because that is anyway going to happen just by the touch of engaging in bhakti. So yeah, that is still a big deal. That liberation from material existence is still a big deal.
Yes.
For that, he does not need to personally appear.
That's why I say that's not his interest, really. Yeah. Okay. Also, I think some of those other reasons that Krishna came, those external reasons, they got blurred together for me. Like, I know one reason was to glorify devotional service over material aspirations, right? Another was to
Glorify King Yudhishthira.
glorify him. I think this is one of the ones that got blurred. He wants to glorify King Yudhishthira. Wasn't it because he was one of those who glorified devotional service over material pursuits?
In one sense, you could say that too, but that is not like very evident in the explanations of the verse.
So yeah, so then to tease it apart for me, he wanted to glorify Yudhishthira again for what?
Because he's a devotee. There are many kings who show that as if they are all trying to protect dharma, but he clearly established no, they're all not. It's who really knows the dharma and will be able to protect the dharma. So
Okay,
in
so
that sense,
yeah, I think that's why those two reasons got blurred for me. So because basically to glorify Yudhishthira as a devotee,
yes,
is indirectly glorifying devotional service.
Yes.
Okay, so those were two reasons. And a third reason was because
To answer the prayers of us.
Yeah, because they wanted God as their son. So that's the third reason. And the fourth reason wasn't there?
The fourth reason, Brahma's prayers.
Okay, because the demigods went to him to unburden the earth.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Anyone else has any comments?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. See you all
Hare Krishna.
next week, Krishna. Yeah, we have a boat festival next week, but it's not in the morning; it's in the evening, so we'll be able to see you.